Okay, looks like we're live. I'm here. My name is Zack Green, and I have been helping to build a little organization called UniteBlue, which is meant to help connect and empower progressives, mainly on Twitter. Mr. Galvin here has agreed to come on and have a little chat to discuss concerns that folks have about UniteBlue, as well as my own history working in politics and Twitter. We've agreed not to have any sort of moderator for this discussion, so it'll simply be one-on-one. And we both agreed to come in good faith to try to resolve these concerns and find a constructive way to move forward. I don't believe that we really have any ground rules in particular. The only thing that I've asked from Mr. Galvin is that he ask a question at a time and allow an appropriate amount of time for me to respond. And I will let him ask basically any question that he decides. It's an open topic, so it can range over a large area. Generally, these last for about half an hour. But I think I can spare as much as an hour to try to fully address these concerns. So I'll let you take it from here, Mr. Galvin.
Okay. Thank you, Zach. And we do appreciate the opportunity to speak openly with you. We have had questions, which primarily has been the biggest sticking point. And this forum will allow us to address those and hopefully satisfy everybody that UniteBlue is an organization that they can either join or not join, but no matter which, can exist in the ecosystem with the rest of us and move on from the acrimony that has developed on the progressive Twitter sphere. With that being said, I will just quickly introduce myself. I am not a political employee or representative of any organized organization, though I do have membership in OFA and ACLU, as I've mentioned, in the Democratic Party, but that's it. I'm not employed by any of your competitors. I no longer am in the business that you're in. Currently, I am disabled and not working, so I have no vested interest financially or politically in your success and in what you're doing. So I have no agenda other than I have concerns about the safety of our information and the method being used online to promote your company while promoting progressive causes. So my first question, let's just get the elephant out of the room here. If you could take some time to explain what the connection has been with the GOP, any of their past candidates, and the Tea Party with you and your dad, or anyone else that's actively involved in UniteBlue's organization.
Sure, absolutely. So let me try to give you a brief history of my work in Twitter politics to date. I started as a programmer, and I did that mainly so that I could travel around, and I got to see 49 states, and I love pretty much all of them. I then joined my father's firm, which is 140dev.com, which does Twitter development and consulting, and I did that at the end of 2010. That firm does a lot of work with different organizations, such as financial companies, sports companies, builds things for university type of work, as well as entertainment, and also worked within politics. So it was a completely nonpartisan firm, and I think that's where a lot of the concerns arise about my own history. So we started off with a site called 2012 Twit, and that was mainly a nonpartisan analytics site which showed daily growth in followers and mentions and retweets for different presidential candidates, and made it really easy for people to basically follow the 2012 election through Twitter. We did a lot of other projects, and then the first one that came up that people have expressed concerns about was the first presidential debate on Twitter back in July of 2011. The way that that worked is that my father's company built a platform that allowed people to have controlled discussions on Twitter, which basically means that instead of using just a hashtag where anybody can join in, it took tweets from certain people and then created an organized discussion. One of the uses of that platform was for the first presidential debate on Twitter, which was Republicans because it was a GOP primary. We were approached by Andrew Hemingway, who is in New Hampshire, about using the platform for the debate, and my father agreed. Andrew Hemingway then went to find sponsors for the debate, and that was the teaparty.net. And so now this has become the teaparty.net debate. Obviously, that's not in any way a political statement or a sign of support for them in any way. I would suggest that instead you look at it something like a TV organization. If CBS has advertising and that advertising is Republican, that doesn't make CBS Republican. It merely means that the sponsors who chose to use that platform to promote their message are Republican. And that was done on a nonpartisan basis. So that was my first real experience, kind of with behind the scenes looking at how presidential campaigns work, especially on the Republican side. And that was my first time kind of being disgusted with the way that it works behind the scenes, because I got to actually talk with a lot of presidential campaigns, and I got to have, for instance, there was a conference call during the debate, and all of the presidential campaigns were there. And what I saw was that they were purely destructive, that their job was not in any way to provide a positive platform or vision to move the country forward, but the job of these political operatives on the Republican side was merely to tear each other down. And that was, for me, kind of terrible. After that, we worked on many other things, creating different types of applications and websites that allowed people to follow the 2012 election. Some things like that were an app, mobile app, that allowed people to track the GOP primaries. Again, that wasn't in any way a political statement. It was merely a way for, it was more market demand. It was the GOP primaries, so an app about the election was necessarily about the GOP. The last thing that people seemed to express concerns about was our work for the presidential candidate Buddy Roemer, who was a Democrat for about 30 years, 4 terms in the House of Representatives, and also for 2 terms as the governor of Louisiana. Then he became a Republican and quickly lost the next governorship of re-election. And at the same time, we were working on Occupy Wall Street, and we thought that Occupy was really a movement that needed organization. And so we were trying to use Twitter to find influencers, that sort of thing. And when that happened, Buddy Roemer was in Zuccotti Park in New York, which was basically the heartbeat of the Occupy movement. And his issue was getting money out of politics. And I thought that problem of the role of super PACs, of the role of money in politics, of our system being bought by Wall Street and other super rich was problematic. I don't agree, and I never have agreed with all of his positions on every issue, but I did agree with the problem that both he and Occupy decided to focus upon, the role of money in politics. And I think there's still a huge problem there. I will say that we were at that time not interested in working for any Republican campaign, and we didn't agree to work with him until he told us that they would be going independent. We thought that would be an interesting opportunity to push an issue that's firmly on the left. I'll close by saying that that really was the time when I got to see Republican politics close up. I watched and analyzed every single presidential debate, and what I saw disgusted me. Just that's the only word that I can think of. When you see things like them booing gay soldiers and them cheering the death of the uninsured, when you see Michelle Bachmann or Rick Santorum talking, you can't really help but being disgusted. And so at that time, we decided that being nonpartisan wasn't enough, and to work solely for issues that we believed in and kind of aligned our business with our beliefs. And if you look for over the past year, I think that you'll see, and especially my personal projects, such as For More and Our Money, which prior was to help Obama be reelected, the latter was to help tear down Mitt Romney as a parody account, I think you'll see that I've lived by those politics that I hold.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned that Buddy Roemer had told you that he was going to switch to an independent position and drop out of the GOP before you went to work for him. What type of time period was that representing?
Well, before we agreed to work with him, they told us that they'd be going independent. They weren't independent for the first period of time that we worked with them. He was still part of the Republican Party, and I was personally a little bit upset about how long it took. But the same way that I can tell you right now that we are working towards becoming a nonprofit, but for that to go through the full time with the IRS and everything, it will take a couple of months to actually achieve that. It takes some time for some of these things to happen, and often in the political world, you make these decisions internally before you act upon them publicly.
So the press release announcing that Buddy Roemer and Dev-elect were joining forces in September of 2011. At that point in time, you had already been told that he was going to be switching over, which didn't happen until the end of February of 2012.
It wasn't September. I'll have to go and look at the press release. I believe it's November or December. But yes, before we began working with them, they told us that they would be going independent.
Okay. Obviously, you know, I don't know when that conversation that you just represented took place, but I will take that at face value. Now, a statement that you did make online, and I know, you know, we're not in, but, you know, I've been in business, and I know that sometimes we say things, I believe the technical term is puffery.
I call it marketing, but yes.
Yeah, and we can end up saying something that's not really accurate, but it doesn't necessarily have evil intentions. So let me just ask you, when you told me and a few others on a conversation that you were never paid by the GOP or the Tea Party or Buddy Roemer, do you want to change or add to that at this point?
We were, the only things that were in any way Republican were probably the Tea Party debate, as people call it, or the first presidential debate on Twitter. And yes, Roemer was Republican for the first period of time that we worked with him, and then we also worked with him when he was part of the Reform Party to try to get a presidential nomination under the Americans Elect organization. Yep.
So checks were dispersed.
Sorry?
Funds were dispersed to you from them.
From Roemer, yes, absolutely. I think it's actually public online because this issue is money in politics. They capped their donations at about $100 per person, and then actually put all of their donations as well as disbursements publicly. So I don't actually know the exact amount, but you can find that pretty easily, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that gave you an opportunity there to just clear that record so that everyone can see that, okay, Zach is not saying that he's never been paid. And I don't begrudge you making a living. The business aspect of it, I get.
If I can say one thing here, I think it is important to make a distinction between 140 Elect and UniteBlue, because certain parties have tried to make it seem as if UniteBlue, which wasn't even in existence, held the presidential debate, for instance, themselves. 140 Elect is a business, and the goal of that business is to make money. UniteBlue is a separate organization, which should be a mass state nonprofit this week, and after that we're going to be seeking 501c4 status most likely. We're looking at different options there. But they are separate entities, and we are working in a couple of ways to try to create a firewall between them. That includes a couple of things such as the bylaws of the nonprofit having a conflicting interest clause, or a couple of clauses that are actually pretty strong, which will limit the ways in which they can work together. And also a separate separation agreement that would be signed both by 140 Elect and 140 Dev, our companies, and then UniteBlue as an independent nonprofit organization, which would basically state that both 140 Elect and 140 Dev are in no way allowed to use resources from UniteBlue in any way. And so that's meant in some way to create it as a separate organization and stop any potential abuse by businesses, including our own.
Very good. I commend you on that. I would just say as constructive criticism that we probably could have avoided a lot of the issues that we find ourselves dealing with if you guys had thought that through in advance and done that prior to launching the actual implementation of this project. Because today, I know you say there is no connection, but legally you guys are about as intertwined as anything can be. Share the same address.
I will say that UniteBlue has definitely evolved, and it didn't start in the way that it is now. Originally, it was just supposed to be a very simple website. And the idea of the website is actually only what you see on the follow page of UniteBlue now, which is a very easy way to find influential, interesting, engaged, and active progressives. It was just supposed to be a very simple tool. And what's kind of happened since has really evolved, where there's been an opt-in community and a much larger presence on Twitter. And to keep up with that demand, we definitely found that taking the route of a nonprofit is more in tune with the needs. I will say that definitely I've taken missteps and mistakes, but I think that anyone who has looked closely has seen that I'm always open to constructive criticism, and based on comments from a couple of different people, we've adjusted things like our privacy policy accordingly. So if anyone ever has concerns about UniteBlue or has input on how we should be taking it forward, I encourage you to give me suggestions on what to do, not only what's going wrong now. I'm definitely the first one to admit mistakes and then act very quickly to correct them.
Okay. 501c4. Basically, that's not going to allow you to work directly in coordination with the campaign.
I will say just there that we are also looking at becoming a 527 or a political action committee and exploring the options there basically for the problem that you described. How influential can we be in the 2014 campaign directly?
Okay, that definitely will take care of that, but it introduces another issue that I'd like to hear your thoughts on, and that is transparency and accountability. To, in essence, your workforce. Those of us, and I use us in the generic form, on Twitter who are liberals and progressives and independents supporting progressive ideals or candidates or positions anywhere in the United States, we potentially are your employees, unpaid, but can be directed and will be acting in a way that is going to benefit your business as well as that cause. So as a 527, what is your intent on keeping that volunteer force informed and letting them see what's going on behind the curtain with the money and with the policy decisions of UniteBlue.
Sure, absolutely. As a 501c4 or as a 527, we would have a board of directors. And right now we already have a board of advisors. Of course, that's a non-legal informal entity.
Right.
But the board of directors would definitely have oversight of every decision that we make, voting power. And the way that these kind of work, it's an independent organization, and unlike a business, we wouldn't own it. And if we take any action that they feel is against the progressive community, they can actually vote us out, and there's nothing that we can do about it. So there's some inherent accountability there. Our current board of advisors is comprised of people like the New Deal, which we hope that the progressive community trusts to oversee our actions in a way that would never hurt them, and that gives inherent accountability. For disbursements, I believe that the standard is to give full disclosure of disbursements every quarter. Obviously, my accountants may disagree, and I'll have to ask them. But we'll be in full compliance with all standard procedures there. As far as how it could possibly help our other businesses, the bylaws of UniteBlue, which are being put into place once we get Massachusetts nonprofit corporation status, have conflicting interest clause, which don't allow us to charge any more for services than we would otherwise get without UniteBlue, and would also allow the board of directors to do a research on the common costs or average costs of the services for the marketplace. And if they then later found that we charged extra in any way, the added funds would go directly back to UniteBlue. Also, the separation agreement that I mentioned earlier is going to be put in place to make sure that no resources of UniteBlue can be used by any business, including our own, in any way. So those are a couple of the steps that I have in place. But I guess in the interest of moving this forward constructively, do you have any suggestions on what I didn't say that you think would be important to try to increase this transparency?
Excuse me. Suggestions on something that you can do today would be, and this is transparency on the culture as opposed to the money at the moment. But I think one of the biggest positive things that could come out of this would be for you to personally direct all members of UniteBlue to not engage in any kind of trolling, tearing down, mimicking, in any way debasing anyone on Twitter who is not clearly a right-wing nut job who's trolled themselves and is coming in and making outlandish and racist remarks or whatever. You know, in which case, tell them to go to hell and then move on.
Yeah.
But
I'll definitely agree with you there. I will say that we've already tried to take steps in that direction. I send tweets every once in a while telling people just to ignore trolls or to not troll others, as well as for asking personally, because I have no control over what people do whatsoever. But I ask them at least for everyone on the left to lay off everyone else on the left and focus their attention to the real issues. We also do have a best practices that can be found on the info page of our website, which is basically to the effect of what you just said and is sent in a welcome tweet to every single new member, which basically says to increase or to improve the discourse on Twitter, it's best to try to find constructive dialogue where possible and to move forward where that's impossible. But I'll say so now, and I will say so again publicly on Twitter after this. Trolling, especially of folks on your own side, is definitely something that we should all avoid as much as possible because it distracts from the real issues and kind of just brings down the quality for everybody. If I can now, I think it is important to also recognize, I'm not going to say this is from you at all, but from other folks who have been attacking UniteBlue, Mainly, they are anonymous, and they have been engaging in attacks which I think are unfounded and are largely hurtful to the progressive community. If I can read a list, I can actually say a couple of the attacks that have been done against us. One is the claim that we're hacking accounts, that we're stopping people from tweeting or sending direct messages, that we are blocking accounts without people's knowledge, that we're unfollowing from people's accounts, that we are tweeting without their knowledge, that we are stealing passwords, that we're stealing emails, that we're tracking people with Twibbons, that we're tracking people with cookies, that we're selling data that's already public and free, that we hacked people's accounts and stole them. People claim that we work for Herman Cain, which is false. They claim that I support Ron Paul, which is another Zack Green in Jacksonville. They claim that I and my father are registered Republicans, which can be easily disproven from our voting record or the card which we actually found. They claim that we're funded by Rove and the Koch brothers. They have published my family's names and addresses, including calling out my dead grandmothers by name. They've called out my family's businesses. They've called out my father's professional reputation and attacking his business at 140 Dev on unrelated matters. They've attacked my personal reputation, calling me a pedophile, releasing pictures of people doing illicit drugs, and defiling a blow-up doll. Neither of them were me. Claims that we are making blogs attacking other people's families. Wasn't us. Told us to report accounts and telling other people to report our app directly to Twitter for abuse, which directly affects my father's business because he's a Twitter consultant and developer. So if he gets in trouble with Twitter, it really destroys my entire family's livelihood. Members have been intimidated with threats that they would be attacked by people like Anonymous, and other ones have insulted and called them sheep, minions, and other things like that. Now, clearly, a lot of this has come from folks who are completely anonymous and don't want to be known. And you have to really ask these people's motives as well. Because I've seen lately that Republicans, especially on Twitter, are cheering and very excited about the attacks on UniteBlue and trying to spread them as widely as possible. And these divisionary tactics are very destructive. So I think that we need a mutual détente, not only on the side of any members of UniteBlue who feel attacked or insulted, but also from the anonymous folks who demand transparency while providing none of their own, and are not only attacking UniteBlue as an organization, but attacking me personally. And I'll just finish by closing that I understand that in the political world, in order to affect any type of positive change, you need to have thick skin. And I do have thick skin, and I'll keep working at this no matter how much I'm personally attacked. The problem, though, is that what you're seeing is a real decrease in excitement across the progressive community within UniteBlue and outside, as there's this division from sources who refuse to reveal who they are, and that is hurtful for everyone. So I think our first concern should be the well-being of the progressive community and the unity of that community more than anything else.
Well, obviously, a list like that of attacks on any of us is unacceptable. And I do not know who Anonymous is. I have seen some of the folks who have been asking questions of UniteBlue and you attacked anonymously. You made reference to a blog site put up about Trina Cuppet, who, she does not hide who she is, and she is not anonymous. That did contain some fallacies, and just as you expressed, made accusations that could affect her family's livelihood, calling out her husband by complete full name, employer, address, the whole 9 yards, and working where he does, and their brother-in-law, who she says, yeah, my brother-in-law is a Tea Party person. We do not share his politics, but putting his information in there and the fact that he's Tea Party and he was supporting this Republican candidate and then listing his employer was definitely hurtful and put his job at jeopardy. Because of who he worked for. It was politically sensitive, and yeah, he's an employee of a government body down there, not an elected official, not an appointed official, just a worker bee.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I'll just say right now that I denounce that attack. I think that doing those type of personal looks at people's families is wrong. And I will again say that we've been accused of doing that ourselves. I did not build that site or had in any way. And that these attacks on people personally are destructive to the progressive cause and are really more, when you can't prove any wrongdoing, the next best thing that you can try to do is prove guilt by association. And that's what a lot of attacks on us as well have been, is that because, if you can point to a time when UniteBlue sold data to Republicans, go for it. But instead what people are trying to do is attack me personally. And the point is that UniteBlue isn't about me. Before these attacks began to attack me to tear UniteBlue down, a lot of people noticed that I never even took personal credit for UniteBlue. And now it's become largely about Zack Green and not about UniteBlue at all. If I wanted to do a guilt by association, Mr. Galvin, I looked at your LinkedIn profile. I could say that you are an account executive for Time Warner, or you were, and Time Warner is a major funder of GOP campaigns, gave over $1 million in 2012, and that the CEO has deep GOP ties. I also saw on your LinkedIn profile that you are a member of the Chamber of Commerce, which is one of the, if not the largest GOP fundraisers in the country. That doesn't make you a Republican in any way. I'm not going to say that you are because of that guilt of association. I'm just simply trying to point out the tactics that are being used.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood. And let me just make one clarification there. I am a member of the local Winston-Salem Chamber of Commerce, which is not part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is the big GOP money pit and director, which I vehemently oppose. Let me say, the majority of local Chamber of Commerces are good organizations representing small and medium-sized businesses in their localities to help grow the economies in the localities, and their political involvement tends to be pretty nonpartisan. They're issues-based, and none of us should be thinking that if a business has a connection to their local Chamber of Commerce that they are, in fact, supporting the national or the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is a separate organization and is not a good player.
Yeah, I wasn't making that insinuation about you at all. I was just really trying to show.
Don't know that distinction, so
yeah, that's fine.
Brought it up, so let's just clear that out.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. The point is that you can support an organization or a person without supporting everything about them or any other association that they have. Likewise, I supported Buddy Romer's identification of a problem, money in politics, but that in no way means that I support his view on abortion rights or anything like that. And so I think that understanding that, you're not responsible in any way for everything and every tie that every associate you have has is important.
Oh, absolutely. And if I have ever come across as trying to pin you guys down by just a pure association without any proof, I will apologize for that. I try very hard not to do that, but a lot has been written, and sometimes the self-censor button might go off for a little bit and say something that didn't get fully supported. I'm not sure that I've done that, but it's possible. So my intent isn't to smear you or your family.
Oh, no. Again, I tried to preface that by saying that these aren't about you, but simply as you as a representative, as people who are attacking us. There's a lot of other folks, Blue Unite, Op Unite Blue, 140 Blue, Political News, all of them are completely anonymous in every way. They have no author bylines, they have no about pages, they try to hide who they are. And so it's these folks that I think that everyone needs to understand are problematic. There's definitely legitimate concerns about UniteBlue as well, which I've been trying to address through multiple blog posts, through live video chat Q&As, every week and that sort of thing. I've been trying to provide as much transparency as possible. But I think that those legitimate concerns and the attempt to resolve them sometimes are lost behind personal attacks or guilt by association or things of that nature. And so, again, I'm just seeing some comments on Twitter here, and I do think that people need to hear me once again say that UniteBlue members should not be attacking anyone on the left, even if they feel like they are being attacked as members. Sometimes when I'm being attacked personally, people take that as an attack on UniteBlue as a whole, where the membership is solely interested in working together, connecting, and fighting for 2014. And so my advice for people is if they feel attacked, ignore it. And don't just ignore it, but if you see a negative message, send out 2 positive messages. The best way to kind of move beyond the negativity is to try to fill the Twitter sphere as well as the blogosphere with positivity. So that's my advice on that. Sorry, that was just because of everyone talking on Twitter.
Okay.
You can proceed.
One of your current board members, Simon, has been tweeting, saith Simon, on a regular basis, a promotion to let's unite and get behind, and this isn't a direct quote, but you'll know what I'm talking about. UniteBlue, join UniteBlue and move forward with us, or do you think it's better for the GOP not to? Something along those lines. It insinuates, there's an insinuation in that tweet that if you don't join UniteBlue, you're the GOP.
I'm sorry.
Join UniteBlue, it's like George Bush said, you're either with us or you're against us. And that message is the wrong message.
Yeah, I'll agree that's the wrong message. I'm not sure if that was his intention, and I would have to ask him personally.
It's been getting retweeted with regularity, and it's a promotion to get people to join UniteBlue.
Well, I will say that sometimes there's misunderstandings in 140 characters, and so implicit meanings are often sometimes hard to see. I'll definitely ask him if that was his intention and see, and I will say now that's not what we mean at all. We have an important article on UniteBlue itself about how it's an opt-in community. You choose to join, and you cannot join if you don't want to. And even if you don't join, you're still welcome to use all of the tools that we provide for free and to get involved whenever you want. I mean, there's a lot of people saying that we have rules about who you have to follow, who you have to block, who you have to unfollow, and that sort of thing. Those rules simply don't exist. The saying that we came up with is we make the tools, you make the rules. If you choose to follow people, then based on the tools that we provide, you'll most likely get more followers. But we encourage you to use it as a starting point and to follow folks both within UniteBlue and outside UniteBlue, to follow folks on the left and on the right, because you need to not just be having an echo chamber, but to be working together to sway the center and the right to your position. So if the insinuation was that you're either with us or against us, I'll definitely say no. Rather, I think that the approach that people should take is you can either join or not join, and that's up to you. But if you choose not to join, then the people attacking UniteBlue anyway should probably stop. I mean, everyone's an adult. They can make their own decision, and if you choose to join, the people who choose not to should also respect that decision. And from what I've seen for the membership, they feel like that choice to join has been repeatedly attacked, not by you, but by a lot of folks.
I won't deny that there have been those that have attacked, and I don't condone attacks on people because they join UniteBlue. I do agree that we live in a free country and we have the right of association and we have the right to express ourselves and join and group together as we see fit. Mm-hmm. And none of us should be trying to dissuade or discourage any of us from being free.
Absolutely. I will say that a little earlier you defined OFA and other organizations as our competitors, and I just want to try to say that UniteBlue, unlike some other nonprofits, is an attempt to empower everyone on the left and tries to look at everyone as an ally, whether they join or not, or anything along those ways. And I think that recent Twitter bombs, such as Love is Love and Time to Act, really show the way in which UniteBlue is mutually beneficial and not mutually exclusive with other organizations. If you want to join UniteBlue and also engage on LibCrib and Connect the Left and all those others, go for it. There's no reason why you need to just join one. And like I said before, even if you don't choose to join, all of our tools, our website, the lists that are public on Twitter are completely free to use. And I do believe, and I guess this is a subjective statement, but others will probably agree, that we have produced the best curated list of progressives available. And on the website, there's 50,000 people, largely non-members. So you're welcome to go and check that out, whoever you are, with or without joining.
Could you put up a link to those lists?
Sure. I'll just say now that if you go to the UniteBlue profile, you can click lists and you'll see them there. Or if you go to uniteblue.com, there should be a follow tab and you can find them there as well. But I can also make that a little easier to find or tweet them out for you.
And as far as the competition with OFA or any other Democratic Party organizations, obviously, even in the non-charity sphere, the more non-profits that there are competing for the dollars that people have, there is a natural competition. I understand that, but I also understand what you're saying and can accept the fact that you have the right to organize and promote your charity, your progressive nonprofit organization, and people have the right to join it and shouldn't be harassed for doing so. As those of us who may choose not to should be respected just the same. And so as part of that, what can we do today to move things forward? I have made an apology here publicly for any implications or statements that I have made that may smear or implicate by association you or your family. Well, the only family member of yours I've talked about, your dad. Mm-hmm. But he's part of the business. I mean, yep. He's your CTO. So I encourage anyone else who has said anything disparaging about your family to apologize. But it would also be very productive for you to apologize to some specific individuals who have been targeted with a certain degree of viciousness. And I understand from your followers that a lot of them feel like some of these people started it, and we sort of need to move past the who started it phase. Everybody has behaved badly at times and said things that if they had it to take back, if they look at it a year from now, they probably would say, gee, I shouldn't have said that. I was really pissed. But excuse me for my lack of formality there, but we're real people. We're adults. So in that interest, that public apology coming from you to Trina Cuppett and to any other individuals who have been basically harassed by some UB members. And by harassment, I mean from everything from making up the stories about one of your ex-board members and supporting the stuff and promoting and retweeting that site of that false blog put up anonymously. Your members who have done that and who have held discussions with each other talking about what a terrible person she is, look at this site. They know who they are. It probably wouldn't hurt if they're listening to this for them to publicly come on and apologize and renounce those tactics moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely apologize for any actions that I've taken or words that can be seen as attacking others, period. I do work hard to try not to attack anyone back or to insult anyone on the left in any way. And if I failed in trying to reach that goal, I apologize. On behalf of the members, it's kind of hard for me to apologize on their behalf. I'll try to. The best thing that I can do is tell them, stop. And ask you all to try to move beyond this type of back and forth. Because as Mr. Galvin just stated, when other third parties come in, they don't know who started it. All that they see is a fight. And that type of drama and infighting is destructive not only to UniteBlue, but to the entire progressive community. Especially for things like a site attacking somebody's family, that's unacceptable. And not only, I mean, obviously we didn't share it. I've never even tweeted about it because I didn't want to say this is stupid because then there's a link. But don't even share those type of things. I think that the best thing that we can do moving forward, because, I mean, let's face it, there's certain people, again, not you, but there's certain anonymous forces who are taking a very GOP strategy of using misinformation to spread fears in the hope of dividing and conquering. That's what's happening from these anonymous folks. And the more attention that they get, the more that it becomes problematic. So the best solution that I can offer moving forward is to first ignore those attacks and don't fight them back because there becomes a false equivalence once you join. But also to then send a message that's positive or two messages that's positive. And I think that's a way of kind of moving the conversation forward.
Okay. UniteBlue's policies going forward, your strategy as a 527, what's your position going to be on dark money?
On dark money? On money coming in, we haven't finished saying how we're going to disclose incoming donations with our accountants as well as our lawyers. I mean, the big problem there is that if we make a promise right now, the IRS as well as the FEC, and if we'll get upset if we fail to meet that. So if we say that we're going to be, for instance, paying an X amount every month, obviously those type of estimates change, and then we get in trouble with legal authorities. I am interested, obviously we're going to be trying to disclose all donations as possible, and I'd be interested in hearing from the community what type of restrictions they would want as for what type of funds we could bring in. And I think that OFA has set a pretty good standard on that regard about rejecting corporate money, that sort of thing. But I would definitely want to make this an open discussion with the membership, as we try to generally do, and let that be the determination.
Okay. So if I may rephrase and correct me if I'm misinterpreting, your intent is to find a way of taking money but not taking advantage of getting large corporate donations that are secret or large interest group donations that are secret.
That sounds about right.
Okay. So you want it to be fully disclosed and not actually use dark money then?
I mean, I think it's a vague term. I will say that I personally have a very strong problem with the role of money in politics, and that I'm very interested in moving a conversation with our membership about how they would like to what type of donations we would like to accept and that sort of thing. But I think it's an ongoing discussion with lots of vague boundaries, given the way that politics works, that will be resolved as we move forward, for sure.
Okay. Obviously, the benefit of what you're saying now and what will be said in the near future is going to be determined by the actual actions that your organization takes in the future. A large part of what is going to happen now is going to be based on trust. Are your bylaws and your 990C going to be made publicly available on an annual basis to your membership?
We're definitely looking at making the bylaws public. Our lawyers have actually said they never heard of that, but for the interest of trust and transparency, we're going to see, especially the important sections, whether or not we can make the full thing public. Again, making promises on these sort of things before talking to them can also get in trouble as well. But yes, that's definitely an interest. And also, again, I'll reiterate that we will have a board of directors who will be overseeing all of this, and our goal is to make them folks that you trust as well. Whether or not you can trust Zack Green, that's up to you. But I think that you'll be able to trust the organization that we're putting in place, as well as the firewalls that we're putting in place between our organization, UniteBlue, as well as the business 140 Elect and 140 Dev.
Okay. So what I'm hearing as a person that is a potential volunteer down the road, i.e. somebody who could join UB, is that down the road you have the intentions of doing these things which sound pretty good. Are you going to be employing members to work as fundraisers for political candidates or other elections?
I mean, our role there is going to be definitely limited by whether or not we pursue being a 501c4 or a 527, the level of disclosure and involvement that you can have directly with campaigns. For example, if you're a 501c4, you can't have a substantial amount of your organization be involved directly within political campaigns, and they never actually define what the word substantial means. So what that percentage becomes is hard. We don't have any ideas right now regarding having our membership be fundraisers for other organizations or even for ourselves. We haven't gotten to that point yet. I will say that the way that we're trying to mobilize the membership and get them engaged and make their efforts the most fruitful is by organizing a 50-state campaign called Turn Red States Blue. And so we already have this launched in a couple of states where people can try to coordinate people in their area, build lists of progressives who they find interesting and influential and who ask to opt in, and then allow people to connect locally to tackle state issues. We're going to be trying to do that along with two other actions. One is trying to set up tools that allow you to tweet your representatives in any state legislature so that you can ask them to use a vote in a certain way. The second is to get data that's publicly available from the Sunlight Foundation, which is a fact-finding organization, to be able to track all legislation. So the way that this is going to end up working is kind of like an early alert system, where if you say that you're interested in something like reproductive rights, we can tell you every time that your state legislature introduces a bill on that issue, and then allow your state coordinator to get people who are interested to work together, and then use the tools to be able to contact your representatives through tweets and phone calls and fax and mail to take action on that issue. And so what you're seeing now, where Republicans try to push bills through very quickly through state legislatures to push an agenda that was rejected on a national level, is going to hopefully be transformed just by the tools that we're providing. So that's one way that we are looking to get volunteers and get people to be organized both online and offline.
All right. On your websites, and when I say websites, I'm speaking now of 140 Dev and 140 Elect. There is obviously a tie between the two. One is as I see it, the backbone, the infrastructure, the tool design, programming, database management, and analytics, that being 140 Dev run by your dad, and then 140 Elect being a subset of it. I agree, legally a separate entity. They're both LLCs for the record, but they are housed in the same location. There is a cross-pollination of officers, you and your dad. 140 Elect I see as basically being the marketing / action-driven, sales-oriented entity that will monetize the capabilities developed by 140 Dev. Is that an accurate overview?
That's not quite the description that I would use. 140 Dev is a Twitter development and consulting firm. It works with the Twitter API, which is basically how you get data such as tweets, and then works with all types of organizations to try to help them build useful websites and that sort of thing. 140 Elect is my company, which works solely within politics, so it's kind of a niche application of Twitter development. It's not really the marketing arm of 140 Dev so much as the political arm. And yes, they are completely separate organizations and LLCs as well.
Okay, so you've just defined a sharper separation between the two than's apparent between the literature on your websites. So let me ask you this. Does that mean that 140 Elect has its own servers and database separate from 140 Dev, or do you guys share resources?
Yes, we share resources as well as costs. The firewalls are more legal than technical.
Okay. So in essence, my definition in that you're a subset, 140 Elect is a subset of 140 Dev, filling a niche position. In other words, there's a specific market that you're attacking, and I use attacking from the business point of view. The sales and marketing of products and services that are primarily only available because 140 Dev exists with its portfolio of products and services and knowledge base that your dad's developed over several decades. So I think candidly we have, in my mind, we have to say that there's not a clear separation between the two. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing, Zach, but a lot of people look at it, and now I'm going to sort of preach just a second. Look at it, and when they hear you say that, well, they're totally separate organizations, and I'm saying this because this is how I reacted as well, but I know I'm not alone in this. We're totally separate organizations and there's no connection. That doesn't ring true, because anybody who's in this business or has been in this business knows that unless you've got your own infrastructure, unless you've got your own equipment, unless you've got totally separate networks and you're not sharing resources and whatnot, that, as you said, that separation is more legal than substantial. your ability to work and do what you do is because of the resources and the infrastructure that's been put in place and developed by 140 Dev.
Definitely. If I can jump in here, I'll just say that, yes,
Sure.
140 Elect technologically especially is very indebted to 140 Dev for what we're able to do. I think that the distinction that I was trying to put in place was not between 140 Elect and 140 Dev, but rather between both of those and UniteBlue as an organization that's becoming a nonprofit. And as we stated, the UniteBlue organization will be separate as a legal entity that's independent and not actually owned by us, rather will be serving a role on the board. And we're going to try to make that a very firm legal barrier by trying to put in separation agreements and conflicting interest clauses and those sort of things. So just to be clear, I think the distinction is between UniteBlue and businesses, not between 140 Elect and 140 Dev. At least that was my intent.
I understand, and I was leading to that because you made the same claims about, well, UniteBlue is a totally separate entity from 140 Elect, and as you know, and your lawyers will tell you, that at this point it's not. You know, they're one and the same. They're the resources and assets of your organization and your dad's organization. So can you see how those of us who have these type of understandings about business and law and communications technology would feel like possibly you were hiding something when you make statements like that? Can you understand that perception?
Oh, sir, what I was trying to say before is that UniteBlue has kind of evolved and we're trying to catch up with it. So yes, right now, legally, UniteBlue is a joint project by 140 Elect and 140 Dev, but hopefully within the next 48 hours or so, it will actually be a Massachusetts state nonprofit organization.
Not owned by you or your dad, but
no,
by this board of directors.
Well, nonprofits are kind of owned by nobody. They just kind of
Right.
exist independently, and we serve on them and can be voted out by the board of directors.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I do appreciate you. I know that's probably wasn't a comfortable question.
I can answer anything.
I appreciate your clearing that up, and I think that also will let some of your other followers who have been passionate in your defense know that, you know, some of the questions that have been asked, there's reasons why there was a lack of trust, and that is one of the reasons right there. You know, there were statements being made that factually were not true. But I also will, at this point, take you at your word that I think you were talking about the end of this week.
We're hoping to have it by Monday, but it's taking a little longer. But
Okay.
Hopefully by Friday.
Okay, so hopefully by the end of this week, maybe next, UniteBlue will become a separate legal entity, and we will all be able to go to the Massachusetts Secretary of State and see that registered as such, as a nonprofit organization, and you may turn it into a 527, and that's a good thing for for trust, that we can see that there is that separation. So
Definitely. I will just say, as you said, there are definitely legitimate concerns that we've been trying to address in multiple blog posts and multiple live chats, and we're going to be having a UniteBlue Q&A every single week where anybody can ask any question. The problem, though, is that legitimate concerns that can be resolved are then lost within a much broader set of both personal attacks and then just outright lies, not from you, but from certain folks who are repeating the same claims even after they've been debunked. And so those legitimate concerns are lost in a wave of attacks, and members are not only fed up with that, but feel personally accosted because a lot of them are being called sheep just because they want to try to use some tools to empower their activities. And so I guess what I would ask from all the reasonable folks who have been expressing concerns about UniteBlue, it's kind of slightly up to you to decide whether or not you're going to try to denounce people who are engaging in just a smear campaign and not the reasonable concerns, or whether you're just going to allow it to continue. And if you allow the latter, then it's going to hurt the progressive community. There's conspiracy theories, there's attacks, and then there's reasonable concerns. They're all kind of being jumbled out there.
Yes. I won't deny that that's the case, but I think I can say accurately, and this is an assumption, but I think it's an accurate one, that what you and I right now are going to call and define as a conspiracy theory, that there's probably a little bit of daylight between them. Here's another area where we can maybe move through that and close that gap.
Okay.
Coming back to Trina Cuppet and Not Anonymous 3's blog post. I know you have said here publicly today, as well as in some tweets in the past, that that wasn't you. You had no involvement. I would ask that you, I know you've got the skills between you and your dad, go back and do a little research into the people who have talked about it, find the occurrences of where it's been spread, look at some of those conversations, look at some of the tweets, look at the timing, and then ask yourself, this is the general thing, just ask yourself now, could I understand how that's really hurting my organization? It's making it look like it's us. But here's the ask. Here's the action item. Publicly reach out to those people and smack them on the hand. Tell them, whoa, you can't do that. You are putting me and my dad at potential legal risk here by doing that. And I don't condone that. If you know who that UB2, which sounds like, you know, IB United Blue 2, it's the username for Not Anonymous 3. It's on a WordPress account, as I'm sure you know.
Actually, I saw it the first day and kind of ignored it after that. I'm just actually,
it's still up. It's still being put out there, and people are still saying that Trina's GOP, Trina's Tea Party, Trina's a plant. She's a boy. You know, she's a man. It's just like what you were saying. People saying about your family.
Definitely, and I'll say right now,
her family.
Whomever put that up, it's time to take it down. And I guess I can try to look more if you have any more information and try to figure it out. I haven't seen who's
some
done
of the tweets out there get pretty close to tying your board of directors into it.
I saw a tweet of like someone commenting on it or something, but if I saw any evidence that anyone in my organization did it, then they would be immediately dismissed.
If I had today direct evidence showing that your board of directors ordered it, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
Definitely.
That would probably be going somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, there are tweets out there, and that's why I'm saying you need to take your time, as we have done, to look and see this for yourself. because I don't want to be put in a position where I send you something that's out there that you can get, and then to have it, oh, well, you can't trust screenshots because they can be hacked. You know, that article that came out the other day, and you know, everybody, anytime you send a screenshot now, oh, you can't trust that. That's a hacker. So I know that you and your dad have the skill set to go and look at the tweets of saith Simon, IBUB2, go to that web page, and then backtrack it and see who the players are, and then just make it stop. Now, I'm not expecting that you're going to tell them to go throw themselves on a sword, because there's potential legal ramifications there, but you can make sure that it doesn't happen again and that the page comes down. That would be a really good positive step. It would do a lot to help clean up the image. I would recommend that you publicly disclose when with that press release, when you guys went to work for Buddy Romer, and when it was that he changed over, explicitly state what you told me today, that I really liked his position on money and getting it out of politics. But if you did put out anything that was anti-Obama, know that would be fair game for anybody to throw out there, like, hey, because that's going to be the other big question that you're going to have to answer over time. And as I said, it's trust. You're asking us to trust you that you will be firmly and 100% committed to the left. And when I say the left, I mean progressive ideals, Democratic Party. The person may be a Democrat. We definitely want to attract the center. The old moderate Republicans, the ones who today would be called liberals by these guys in the Democrat or the Republican Party. We want to attract them over to our side. We got more in common with old Northeastern Republicans today than we have ever had, and we need them to help us get control of the House and the Senate and the local legislatures, and get this country back going in a good progressive future-oriented direction again.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I'll definitely say, just publicly, I've been a lifelong progressive. I've only ever voted Democrat from the top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket. We definitely had a nonpartisan business in 2011, 2 years ago. And I think that my involvement seeing the GOP primaries up close and analyzing every debate definitely made me align my business with my beliefs, which is not always necessarily a luxury that everybody has, but I'm glad that I get to do that. I'm firmly committed to the progressive cause, and I've stated publicly multiple times, and will say so again, that we will never work for anyone on the right in any way, and that both 140 Elect and 140 Dev and any other business will never do any type of Republican political work whatsoever. And we've already, over the last year, rejected clients who have come to us and asked us to do things based on that basis. And that's why all the attacks that you see, sorry, I don't need to call them attacks, but everything that you've seen has been coming from 2011. And that's basically because of seeing the GOP primaries and how messed up they are. But I think that you're right that the debate that we're having here is not necessarily as important as the debate that just happened over in D.C., where they're deciding whether or not that people can marry each other based on who they love. And I think that the actions that we've taken to try to trend things like love is love, as well as all the other issues that we've tried to push, such as We Demand a Vote on Gun Control, which was joined by Obama's team, Biden, 20 members of Congress, and other things like Save USPS, which was captured by MSNBC, along with a dozen other Twitter bombs. I think that it shows basically our commitment to the progressive cause. I mean, if we were a secret Republican campaign, then we must be the most self-destructive one since Romney. Over 2 million new members over 2 million new connections have been made between UniteBlue members since we started, or since they joined. And that level of connection is something that we could never control in any way whatsoever. So if we ever decide to go crazy and decide to sell out to the right, which won't happen, I think it's pretty clear that everyone would leave immediately and then be actually better off than when we began. But I think that if you look at my personal politics, and I have 10,000 tweets on 140 Elect, you can look at them all. If you can find me taking a conservative position on any issue ever, I'd be interested to see it. I mean, my personal projects in 2012 were 2 accounts, 4 more, the number 4 MORE, who some of you might have seen, and that was just a personal project to help Obama get reelected. The other one was a parody account, Mitt Our Money, and that was just to kind of expose Romney's Romneyness. I think he speaks for himself. But there were about 35,000 tweets, and you can still see that at 140elect.com/MittOurMoney. We've created the most popular attacks that you could do and make them easily tweetable. Those are my personal projects. I never got paid for them. I wanted to do them, and that's where my passion was. And so I think that those type of things show that I've been fighting for the left for a while, especially with all my personal time. I mean, I clearly have worked hard, and I do have some talents and skills that I could use if I wanted to make money. I've decided to put the last 8 months and all of our own money, UniteBlue has been solely financed by us to date, into building this project. It's what I'm passionate about, and it's what I want to do because I think it's the most effective way that I can create change. Back in 2011, when I was working on apps and websites, I didn't feel like it mattered that much because a website doesn't sway an election. And so that's kind of one reason why I was more fine with being nonpartisan until I saw the types of things that the GOP were actually trying to do to our country. And when you compare President Obama to President Bush, you can't deny the way that millions of lives are affected by one person who holds a certain position. And so now, seeing UniteBlue, seeing how it's gone, seeing the way that the entire progressive community, from the top down, seeing the way that it's been featured on places like CNN and MSNBC, I feel like it's actually having a real impact. So I'm fully devoted to trying to build it in any way possible.
I will, excuse me, tell you that I accept your statements there at face value. It's the actions coming forward. I believe you took some notes on some of the action items, some of the things that I have suggested that be done now to really lessen the acrimony and using your sway as it is with your followers to get them to cease and desist. It would still be nice to hear a public apology, not an admission of guilt or direct responsibility, but a public apology to Trina Cuppett, and advise and just tell your followers, leave Trina alone. She's not a GOP plant. I'm not a GOP plant, which I've been accused of a number of times. I do not believe, and I have gone through your Twitter feeds and stuff, I do not believe that you are a GOP plant. I did have questions about the the ethics of working for one party, and in all fairness, you say 2011. Yeah, it started in 2011, but with Romer, it did go into 2012. But we're splitting hairs there. You worked in essence up into the summer for GOP / third-party candidate, and then within a couple of months, your UniteBlue project started. Now, I accept that you're telling me the truth, that it's because you decided that you did not want to play nonpartisan anymore because you wanted to put your passions where your beliefs are. And I commend that. And I'm accepting that you were telling me who Zack is when you talk about the freedom to marry, no matter what sex, is valuable and needs to be protected. DOMA needs to be rejected. I'm taking you as being 100% truthful as Zack when you say that you want to see health care and Obamacare, which I use as a term of endearment. Some people get angry when I say that, but even Obama's owned it. Don't let the right own that term. But when I hear you talking about health care and how the AHACA is important and we need to do things to support it, we need to promote Democratic candidates, Representative Merkel up in Massachusetts, Ms. Bush down in South Carolina, help her win that seat. I believe you mean those things. And I'm saying that here in this, not to butter up you, because that serves me no purpose, but to amplify that message to the people I know who have been questioning and concerned about what is UB, what is their ultimate intention, what are they going to do with this control, in essence, that you have gained by organizing this group, whether it's intentional or not. Fact is that you do have some control now. I'm telling them that I believe you're sincere in your political beliefs. I don't fault you for wanting to make a living or your dad for having a business. And I can accept your TV analogy of working for the Tea Party thing. It's like a television station, it's revenue. Yeah, I worked for Time Warner, but I also know that Time Warner also supported a lot of Democratic candidates. Time Warner gave support to Senator Hagan here in North Carolina, who I donated to and did a little bit that I was allowed to do because I was working for them at the time to help her because I believed in her. But we had clients who were Republicans and we had clients who were Democrats. We put up Senator Burr's operation and we put up Senator Hagan's operation. I understand that. That was just pure business. We weren't out publicly pushing for either side and trying to get the public to join us in our campaign for one side or the other. You are now in that position. Before, when you were just developing a platform, I can see the distinction. And I will try to communicate that to folks, that there's a distinction. I have researched, I have found some things that did raise questions, but I don't know that all of them are really germane to the topic of UniteBlue and what you're doing going forward. They might be germane to trust issues, but if I see things going forward that contradict what's being said in this meeting, then I'll reopen some of those lines of inquiry. As far as your current board of advisors is concerned, I would recommend that you publicly put out some tweets as to who they are again, with links to their curriculum vitae.
Okay.
I personally know some of them. I've been followers of all of them for a number of years and have enjoyed them, including the one who left in disgrace, which I know you don't want to talk about, but you probably need to publicly come out and and I'm sure you've gotten advice on your lawyer how to handle this, but you probably need to put a public tweet out there that, did Bill leave?
We put out a tweet at that time that he is no longer a member of the Board of Advisors.
Okay. Did he leave on his own accord?
He is no longer a member of the Board of Advisors.
Okay. And I don't consider Bill a topic that needs to be discussed anymore. I don't know if you read my rant last night, but I talked to him in that rant specifically and personally, and I told him what I think he should do, but that's not you. He's not UniteBlue. I know that. I think you learned learned a lesson there. Then I made some statements about you guys being new and not knowing some of the, I apologize for some of that tone, but the message was clear and I think it was accurate. But I can also see you're a quick learner. And so some of these missteps and mistakes will be things that will help you improve your operation going forward. Mm-hmm. So long as you're not taking it personally and letting your ego get in the way and get defensive.
Sure. I'm always here to listen to any type of constructive criticism. What I would ask is that if people have any types of problems at all with anything that we do, take an approach of saying what we should do instead of saying just, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Because I think that even people who are still very unhappy with UniteBlue can tell you that we have listened to their concerns and actually changed a lot of policies and things based on those concerns. I mean, our main focus is really on how to build this organization based on the feedback of the community, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what the progressive cause is. What I've seen from some folks, mostly the anonymous folks, is really a GOP tactic of hammering home misinformation again and again to create fear, to divide and conquer. The progressive approach is to find common ground, address concerns in a constructive fashion, and find solutions that move us forward. And I'm always interested in the latter.
Okay, and I agree with you there as far as the solutions and the progressive methodology. I do want to say, in defense of some of the folks out there who've experienced what I've experienced, who are reasonable people, that there are probably as many, if not more, people who are in your membership now who are using that, what I call the RWNJ methodology of attack, 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 and not really, just keep asking the unanswerable question, or the question that you've answered in 10 different ways, but they just keep asking it over again. You're never going to give them an answer that's good enough, because they're not really looking for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
They're just wanting to fight. I have personally, and one of my followers said, one of my problems is that I'm too nice, engaged, and stayed engaged too long, trying to reach that common ground, trying to get to the point of talking to a human being rather than somebody who's just
trolling.
That's
the word for it. Yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely people who don't want to have any type of resolution. They're just trying to say things in order to get an emotional response back from you, and that's their satisfaction. But then there's also people...
giving people that satisfaction, and then later kick myself on the butt for doing so, but it's because I've got this natural, innate belief that everybody has got good in them, and we can all find a way to talk, and we can agree to disagree on some things. Somebody, for me to like them, doesn't have to believe everything I believe. They just need to be respectful and honest and willing to listen, as I'll be willing to listen, and enjoy our common areas and respect our differences.
Definitely. I will say that the very nature of Twitter, one, is something where people often go to complain about things, and two, the having 140 characters not only facilitates misunderstandings, but often leads to the suggestion of conflict where it doesn't actually exist. So that's why we're trying to do more of these Hangouts every week, especially with UBQA, where anyone can ask a question. And for some of these issues, you can't just answer it in a tweet or 2 tweets or 3 tweets, and also not everybody wants to hear the same thing over and over again. So if anyone else ever wants to do a Google Hangout, I'm always open to them with just about anybody, and to have a reasonable discussion in a much longer format where people, if they're interested, can come in and join. I think that it solves some of those inherent conflict generators that you'll find on Twitter.
Very good. How are we on time?
Been going for a while now. I think we can close up. My computer's almost dead on battery. If that's okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate it, and I respect you for allowing me to be able to ask whatever I wanted to ask, and giving me the time. I think this worked out really well. It was civil. And this is how we should be able to, not just you and I, but all of us on Twitter, this is how we should be able to have discourse every day. There's no reason for anything else. We're all supposed to be smart, progressive, thinking people, basically of a democratic, not necessarily just democratic, bent. So let's live that, and not just say, oh, I'm a Democrat, and then flame people. Or, oh, I'm an independent, and then just flame people. So thank you. This was a good step forward. Now, as a final reach out, I really encourage you to make that apology to Trina Cuppet and anyone else you know from communications to you that's been personally attacked. And if it's a group like Political News who is anonymous, I don't know who that person is either. Have you thought about inviting him on, or her on?
When they first started attacking, I actually invited them to an interview, and then they blocked me. So they're not in. Yeah.
That's their loss. There are some things that have been said about you that I shake my head and I said they shouldn't have said that. We don't know that. And I recognize the truth in what you said about there have been smears against you that are unsubstantiated. There have been. I've seen it. I reject that. Please, folks, don't do that. Let's don't call somebody guilty just because of an association in either direction. And let's try to be the better people that we can be. I look forward to seeing the bylaws and the creation of UniteBlue as a nonprofit. I look forward to seeing the language that you described, that it will never be or used to sell, rent, give, or in any way aid any GOP Republican candidates, that it will be strictly progressive Democratic. I'm sure that you might not want to put in that because I suspect, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you would like to be open to third-party candidates, and that's you're right. But if so, say that in those documents. In other words, be transparent. Let us know exactly what you're going to do. Once you are a corporation, separate, and we can see those documents, and the board of directors has to live by those documents, that will go a long way to putting a lot of this to bed. And the past work for the GOP will become a non-issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'll close up by first thanking you for spending the time to talk with me. I definitely think that Google Hangouts and videos and long discussions are sometimes more conducive to figuring out where conflict and issues exist than anything else. And Twitter is kind of the opposite, where it produces conflict, even if it shouldn't.
Agreed.
So thank you for your time. Thank you for expressing your concerns and letting us talk civilly like this. I think it was definitely a constructive discussion. And if you have any more concerns, I'm always here to listen to them. Sometimes email as well may get them a little more, or twit longer, whatever, fully espoused. And yes, I will definitely apologize yet again to Trina or anyone else who feels like they've been attacked. I personally worked hard to try not to attack anyone on the left. I think that I definitely insulted political news because I don't like yellow journalism, sensationalization without any evidence to try to promote traffic. But beyond that, I've definitely worked to not attack anyone, and I will continue to do so. And I'm going to encourage the membership yet again that if you see folks attacking, don't attack back, because it's just false equivalence where anyone who comes in just sees folks fighting and is just turned off by the drama. Instead, just ignore it and post positive tweets, add positivity back to the Twitter sphere, and that's the best way to drown out the anger. If you want to join, join. If you don't want to join, don't join. You're still welcome to use all of our tools. They are and will always be free, and you might find that they're a really great way to connect with folks on the left, and you can do that on Twitter or the website. It's completely up to you. But I think that you're reaching the main point, which is that the issues being debated in D.C. right now are much more important than this debate. And I think that things such as the disgustingness that happened at CPAC were largely ignored because the left was too focused on fighting one another and not focused on how they're destroying our country. I mean, I think we all have to acknowledge that, yes, we won the 2012 election handily. Yes, demographics are going for us. But largely, we have to be thankful for the fact that the Republican Party has fallen apart due to infighting, that the far right has taken the entire party to such an extreme and had the attitude of you're either with us or against us, that they've essentially crippled themselves. And I don't think that we should ever return that favor. I mean, what we need is a big tent, we need overwhelming numbers, and we need to work together, because although demographics are for us, history shows that the 2014 midterms have lower turnouts than presidential elections. Correct. So unless we get people fired up and ready to go and stay that way, we're not going to be able to take back the House. I mean, we're actually, given gerrymandering where Republicans lost the House by 1.4 million votes last time but still got 17 more seats, we're definitely fighting an uphill battle. So unless we find ways to talk constructively and work together, then we're just helping the GOP and nobody else.
Agreed.
So that has to be our main focus. All of these constructive advice I'm definitely going to work on, and if I miss any of them, just send me a tweet to remind me. And if anyone else has any type of constructive advice on how we should be doing, send it on over, and I think everyone will agree that we do a pretty good job of listening and acting on it. I'll admit that I've definitely made some mistakes, pretty much actually in everything I've ever done, but I tend to correct my missteps pretty quickly. So if you give me something constructive, then I tend to listen and act upon that. But I want to thank everyone who has been listening, and anyone who's decided to either join UniteBlue or to use the tools or to engage with the community, even if you're not a member, because I do believe that the idea is valuable, that the idea of not having necessarily an organization that tells you what to do, but something that empowers your agenda to build up your own influence is really effective. I mean, just to close with an example, what I saw, I was in Tampa, and I met Mike Allen Lawn, and he started with 200 followers. Now he's north of 3,000 followers. He used to tweet twice a week. Now he tweets 40 times a day, and he has an amazing voice. Twitter isn't zero-sum. The more engaging and exciting and involved that we make it, the more that we're able to kind of get people to do something that they wouldn't otherwise. And that's hopefully the goal, is to make Twitter and progressive politics on Twitter an easier and more rewarding experience. So I hope that's something we can provide. And if you feel like we're not, just let us know.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you very much, Mr. Galvin. Cheers.
Cheers.